This is a special episode recorded on Saturday, March 14th, with the intention of helping you to fortify your inner state of being during these uncertain times of the COVID-19 era. Every episode of the Great Man Within podcast is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. And trying times like these are absolutely calling for that great man. So in today's discussion, Bryan and I give you 5 ways to fortify your foundation during times of turmoil. Hey, brother. Thursday morning, I woke up and I was reflecting quite a bit on the turmoil of the last few days. And I wrote myself a note in my journal that I ended up feeling compelled to share with the men of our community. And so I'd love to read this excerpt that was originally for me, but then I sent it out to all of my socials and all of the men in our community. So do you like to hear it?
Well, please, by all means.
All right. So it says, gentlemen, the world is calling for your leadership right now. During times of uncertainty, people crave leadership. They seek someone who can bring clarity to the chaos. So how you show up is more important now than ever. Those you care about will be watching you closely. They will be taking cues from you, and your actions will guide theirs. So you have a choice. Are you going to be the guy who just breaks the news, or will you be the one fortifying your foundation? A great man creates environments where he and those he cares about can thrive. That's especially true in times of turmoil. A mountain can weather any storm. Be the mountain. And I was surprised at how many people responded to the email I sent out or sent me DMs on my different social channels saying, man, dude, it felt like you were speaking directly to me. Or I felt like I needed to hear that right now. Or I had to read this to my team at work. And it just brought some groundedness and stability to this time of turmoil and chaos. And so you and I were speaking about this, and we said, it's time for us to get on this podcast and create a conversation that's timely so that we can help the men that listen to this to fortify their foundation, especially during times of turmoil.
Yeah, these are the situations, Dominic, where we have an opportunity to grow through it, right? Something we talked about prior is this mentality of like, get through it, grit your teeth, just do whatever you got to do to survive, or we can grow through it. And that's true of us as individuals and leaders. It's true of companies. And so the decisions that we make now, like what we do now, matters and will ripple through way past any kind of COVID-19 pandemic, way past any kind of potential economic downturn or whatever else. And so what we're doing now is we're preparing for, yes, the here and the now, but also whatever else is to come, whatever the environment presents to us in the future. And what a great and sometimes scary opportunity to do that.
The thing that you said that is so important to double click on is the distinction between getting through something versus growing through something. And I would have to say that my immediate reaction to this, to everything that's going on, would be to like, okay, let's get through this. Let's grip, like, white knuckled, and let's pray that this has a fast ending. And the difference between that, which is kind of just resisting what is, and this intentional commitment to growing through this, like we're entering a brand new arena, and this is testing us. Like I said before, we're all in the arena now. Like whether or not we like it, like we've been pulled from the stands, spectating. We are all in the arena now. And so it's a choice to continue to resist and hopefully just like this thing will go away, which doesn't look like it will anytime soon. Or how do we show up leveraging all of the tools that we've been talking about for the past year on this podcast to ground, be stable, be better leaders for the people who are maybe not as equipped, who are looking to us for how we're going to react to create an environment where not only we, but those that we care about can thrive. And that's why today we're going to be going through 5 specific ways that you can fortify your foundation during times of turmoil. So I think the first place that we're going to go to is number 1 is embrace the transition, right?
Yeah. Let's not make any mistake about it. right? There is a transition happening. Now, transitions happen all the time in our lives. We transition from work on a Friday to a weekend on a Saturday, from vacation to coming back to work, to not having kids to having kids, right? We have many transitions in our lives that are both big and small. And I think oftentimes we're moving so freaking fast and we're doing the things. We almost like we know it's happening. Like we know that the coronavirus is here. We often don't take the time to just pause and be like, let's honor this. Let's embrace this, the right here, the right now, because it is different. Things are changing.
This is different. Very different.
This is different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the transitions that you mentioned, like the transition to the weekend, it's familiar. That's familiar. We know how to do those transitions. This is a transition we haven't gone through before, ever. And so now that if you're embracing the transition, you're recognizing certain things, right? Like you are going to be home more often, right? You're going to be grounded more often. Now let's talk about some of the implications of that. For someone like me who lives alone, I am now going to be alone more often, at least physically speaking. I will be more isolated. I won't have as much human contact as others. And what that may mean is like certain things may kick up inside of me because
what kind of certain things, Dom? Let's get specific here.
Feelings of isolation, right? Feelings of loneliness. Yeah. And those things may cause some of when I'm moving around so quickly and I'm busy and I'm doing work or whatever, then some of the things that cause me discomfort about being alone are buried. But now that's going to come screaming to the surface. And I know for me personally, that those are the times where I start to fantasize sexually, because that helps me to avoid the pain and discomfort of being
it's escape, right? You've built these escape mechanisms in your life, and we all do this, that we can often go to and we can bury ourselves into work, we can bury ourselves into travel, we can numb ourselves out through masturbating, whatever else, right? But now that we're here and we are more confined to a certain extent, it's like now those tools that we've used in normal everyday life, some of those start to go away.
That's right.
And so those feelings of isolation and loneliness and maybe even horniness, right, they will start to surface. And honoring this transition is just knowing that, being ready for that, and feeling it when it happens.
That's right. And the like other forms of that could be if you're alone or you're stressed out or whatever it is. Maybe you eat more often. Maybe you gamble more often, even though I don't know what kind of sporting events you've been gambling on these days. But think about what your poison is and notice if it's starting to creep up, like your desire to disappear into porn, right? These are things that like we've already started to hear guys come to us and talk about, like that they're feeling this escalation. And then in situations where you live with other people, like Bryan, I know that you and Becca have just recently moved in together. It's not been that long. And this is your first time ever living with someone. Now you're going to be confined to a smaller space. For many of our listeners who have families where kids are going to be at home, there's going to be a lot of energy in a small space. Cabin fever may hit, and recognizing that that's a potentiality. And if you embrace that new normal and start to get creative around like, how can we use that time not to just get through it, but to grow through it, deepen intimacy, and you could come out on the other side much more strong. So I'm curious for you, man, like now that like you're anticipating this, like what are you doing?
Becca and I were reminiscing that before we moved in together, something we talked about was that there are going to be unknowns that come into our lives that we're going to have to wrestle with, that we're going to have to deal with. And our commitment to each other is when that happens, let's recognize it and then work through it. And we know that with the tools that we have and the love that we have, we can do that. And so we were laughing the other night, be like, well, we couldn't have wrote this down 6 months ago. This is certainly one of those things that we didn't think we'd be in the same, small Brooklyn apartment working for the foreseeable future, for at least the next 2-3 weeks. And we are both people that appreciate our space and our individualism. And so now we're going to have to get really, really clear on boundaries. So for example, part of embracing this was I'm making the second bedroom like more cohesively mine to do my work. She is working out in the kitchen, and she purchased a new screen and a keyboard and a new mouse so that she could more easily do her work. And so that's just one really simple example of, hey, how can we make this more cohesive in this new now?
Right on. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is so important because we can drift into this new arena, like we can drift into this transition. And if you're a fan of the show, you've heard us talk ad nauseum about the drift is that state of just being kind of pulled around by the hypnotic rhythm of life, right? It's the opposite of intentionality. So the antidote to drifting, which is just kind of being pulled around by habits, patterns, or the noise of the media or the fears that are out there, the antidote to drifting is bringing intentionality. And now that you know that the two of you who are in Brooklyn, New York, who are in a Brooklyn, New York sized apartment, right, are going to be on top of each other for an extended period of time, it's bringing intentionality to, okay, you know, if we love our space, then let's kind of carve out dedicated space for each other to make sure that we don't feel like we're suffocated or smothering. And I even like the idea that Becca has decided to buy certain things that make like her new existence more comfortable. So start to plan out these things in advance. And it's like, what would bring me joy? Do I need to clear like my apartment or clear my home that's feeling cluttered so that I can start to feel a semblance of structure? Because in this environment of chaos and turmoil, what can bring us grounding and peace is structure. And there's a lot of that that's under our control. And it starts with embracing this transition.
And I can only imagine, so if it's just two people in our household, Becca and myself, and we've already talked about how we're going to coordinate. And so if she's on a phone call for work and you and I are doing a podcast recording, that's not going to work because we're going to be talking in the background. And so we're starting to now coordinate our calendars of when do you have a call? When do you have a recording? Can we both be on the call at the same time? Can one go outside? And so if you have kids, if you have a family, if you have other, and not just kids, but like, let's start thinking about the elderly people in our lives, like potentially our parents or even our grandparents. And how are we bringing them into this new existence, this new transition that we're in? So I think coordinating is a big one too.
Absolutely. All right. Number 2, this is another way that you can fortify your foundation during times of turmoil. Number 2 is build a plan for your information consumption, right? There is so much information swirling around right now that through text messages, through social media, breaking news, you're being pinged all the time. And if you just allow the floodgates to open and you're just absorbing everything, that is drift 101, right? Like you're going to be washed away by the tornado and the tidal waves of information. And so you have to get really intentional around your information plan. And Bryan, I'm going to read you the 4 things that I wrote down for my information consumption plan. And I know you have parts of your, like we're very similar, and you also have some other key points for yourself. So number 1, I said, I will not consume any content for the first 60 minutes of the day, so I can first establish a foundation of inner strength and clarity of vision. I've been doing this for the past week. For the first 60 minutes of the day, I do not open my phone. I don't read any news sources, nothing. I just actually tap inward to say, okay, what am I feeling right now? And there's some angst each and every day that I wake up around uncertainty around my business, uncertainty around food and health and upcoming travel and all of the things, right? And for me to actually like sit with that, cycle through it has been profound, so that by the time that I do start to pick and choose the information that I'm going to allow in, I'm sturdy. The second is I will carefully select the sources that I trust. I will carefully select the information sources that I trust. I'm not just reading anything. If people send me text messages from some fly-by-night, whatever information, I'm not actually clicking on the links. Number 3, I will not allow my work to be interrupted by breaking news. And breaking news is
such a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that a big one for you, man?
Well, there's a book by Gary Keller called The One Thing. Yeah. And awesome. And if there's one thing about the One Thing book, it's do one thing, because we lose. Because
that sounds confusing.
Right? Very shockingly. Tell me more about the one thing. No, they talk about there's something that happens when we switch from one activity to another activity. It's called a switch loss. And we lose focus, we lose energy, we lose momentum, more importantly. And so if you think about this, if you're writing something and all of a sudden you're checking your phone every time you get some sort of blip on the radar or new news happen, especially in this sort of environment, it will take you probably 10 times longer to do something with less quality. And so just by the shifting of our attention to something besides what we're working on, our foundation will start to crumble.
I think Cal Newport talks about that in deep work also, where I think the term is attention residue. So when you shift from one thing to the next, you may think you're focusing on the next thing, but there's this residue of the thing you were just working on that's still churning in your subconscious. So like you're literally like grinding your gears to a halt. That's why in this era of breaking news and people are texting and communicating really often, but they're not doing it from an intentional place. There's breaking news. It's interrupting you and it's causing anxiousness. So I will not allow my work to be interrupted by breaking news. Muting notifications is going to be one of your best friends right now. And finally, I will limit the number of times I check news to 2 or 3 times a day. I will limit the number of times I check news to 2 or 3 times a day because quite frankly, just doing it moment by moment, it really doesn't impact what's happening on the course of my day other than making me more anxious. And I know this because there was a few days ago where I was checking it without any guardrails, and I felt
you're full in drift, and I've been there with you, man. Totally.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: like there is a fear driving our consumption, which is we don't want to miss anything. We don't want to miss that one piece of information that's going to make us change our decision, be more prepared. And so our intention is actually, while maybe unconscious, it's good because we want to be informed. We want to be the right leader, but it's not working, right? Because all this is doing is we are riding the roller coaster of news, and the news is meant to induce fear. So there is value we can gain from the news, new information, but it is designed to induce fear. And so all we're doing is we're plugging into this fear cycle of what is a politician saying today, like what is going to happen in the future and everything else. Here's the promise I give you. If you're only checking news 2 or 3 times a day, like Dominic said, I can promise you, even if there is breaking news in between one of those 2 or 3 times in a day, you will hear about it.
You're not going to miss it. Yeah.
You're not going to miss it. It's not going to, there's not going to be this one piece of news that all of a sudden, I live in Brooklyn here, and we look down on Domino Park, and like my unfounded fear is that all of a sudden I'm going to be missing the news. I'm going to look down at the park and I'm going to see people just running all over the place with their arms up. I'm like, holy shit, what I just missed.
Yeah.
It's like this weird thing. So my promise to you is if you're only checking the news 2 or 3 times a day so that you can keep your foundation, you can keep moving forward and accelerate through this, grow through this, you're not going to miss anything of importance.
Yeah,
promise.
Right on. And listen, that's just my protocol for information consumption, right? It doesn't mean that you need to follow that. It doesn't mean that 2 to 3 times a day is it's what's right for me. And I'm generally someone who consumes less news and less information, but I've had a chance to talk to some people over these past few days who are just rapidly consuming all day. And I can feel their fear. I can feel their tension. Even with all the information, they don't feel more clear or grounded. If anything, there's more panic that's setting in. So for you, design yours intentionally to fit the way that it's going to make you feel informed and also grounded.
The last thing I'll say on information is when we tap into that fear cycle, it's impossible for us to grow. We stay in the let's get through it, let's get through it, let's get through it. It's literally, it's physically, our cells, for example, our biology doesn't grow when under attack, right? Because it's hunkering down.
Yeah.
And so the challenge for us is to unplug from that fear cycle so that we can be in a state of growth even through transitions and situations and disasters like this. Yeah.
Right. 100%, man. Number 3, the third way to fortify your foundation during times of turmoil is get clear on the facts and get clear on your fears. So get clear on the facts and get clear on your fears. Let's start this one with a fear. And the fear can be kind of almost like encapsulated by this one picture that seems to be going around in many different forms. And it's the picture of the empty grocery store, right? Like the aisles that have been cleared out and decimated because there's scared people just buying 300 boxes of the mac and cheese or buying out all the toilet paper. And we had in one of our group chats, like one of our group text messages last night, Bryan, one of the guys in our group said, he's been pretty strong all week, staying strong with his community, but he went to the grocery store last night for the first time and saw the empty aisles, and it just jarred him. And I know that like every time I pop on social media and I see those pictures, it elicits this visceral fear. Just seeing like empty store shelves elicits this visceral fear that if I don't pause and actually bring awareness to that visceral fear, I can go off to the races.
Yeah, you act immediately.
Immediately and panic and be like, oh my God, I got to go do that. And when I actually sit with that fear of like the empty grocery store shelf, when I get to the bottom of it, and I've actually meditated on this, it's this idea that, holy shit, what happens if I run out of stuff and there's nothing else out there? I will starve and I will die. That's really the fear. And then when I actually pull back the layers of it, I'm like, what's the possibility that I will be left without? Like, what is the possibility that there's going to be no friends I can turn to? What's the possibility I'm actually going to really get rid of everything that I have in my home? What's the possibility that the government is not going to set up something for people who have depleted all of their stock? And when I get to the bottom of that, I'm like, I actually feel really confident that I'm taken care of from the own measures that I've taken, but also like the support network that I can rely on.
Yeah, what you did, Dom, is beautiful. There's a beautiful quote by Katie and Gay Hendricks, who are relationship coaches, and they talk a lot about emotion and the intelligence that every one of our emotions has, and fear. They talk about the intelligence of fear is really the desire to know something. And so the antidote for you, Dominic, am I saying that word right? It's not anecdote. Antidote. That's the antidote, not the anecdote. That's a small story with a lesson.
There you go. Thank you.
Similar to a fable. Okay, here we go. And aside, the antidote to fear is often facts.
Yeah.
And facts are not story. They are not what you're concerned about. They're not like what you think might happen in the future. Facts are facts. And I talk about, we use a tool called an issue definition worksheet with organizations whenever they're going through something that they are trying to figure out, whenever they have an issue.
An issue definition worksheet.
The issue definition worksheet. And what in box one, there's 3 boxes. Box 1 is write down the facts. What is true? Period. How much money do you have in the bank? What's your burn rate? How much runway do you have? How many employees do you have? Like, write down the facts. Because oftentimes this is actually the hardest part that people have, because they'll go immediately to story, like to this is what this means.
Yes.
Right. So the facts help ground us. They help get to reality. And that's what you did, Dom. You're like, well, wait a second. Like, yes, all this stuff could happen, but like, who is in my life that I feel could support me in this? Where could I go? Like, write down the facts. Okay, cool. Step 2, box number 2 is write down the complications of the issue. What's causing the issue? Now we're talking about the stories, the situations that might be happening, the unknowns. And oftentimes these can also be labeled as fears. And so my encouragement is to write these down, like write down your fears, because then you can see what's actually driving your behavior.
Right.
And get really, really clear. So now we are clear on both the facts and the fears. And then the third step we do with businesses is like write down what is the key question. And the key question is really simply the one question that, if answered appropriately, could solve this issue. And there's a whole way to go about solving it, but we're not talking about solving it right now. We're talking about just getting to the clarity of that one key question of what you could ask, right? And in the example that I gave, a key question might look something like, how do I align our personal and business needs and our resources to last 6 months in this sort of environment, right? That would be a key question. And now you can take that. You can take those facts, you can take those fears, you can take that key question, and you can go to, in this case, the leadership team, maybe all the employees, and get really creative and innovative on how you actually solve this key question. And we can do the same thing with our friends, with our families. And now we're like coming from a leadership place, a grounded place of like, yes, I have fears. Yes, here's the facts. And let's do this together, right? That's not a weakness. And a lot of guys are worried about that being a weakness. And I think the guy who messaged us, like, he was like, oh my God, like, I feel like I'm exploding now because I've been so strong for so long. It's like, cool. Like, your strength can get you to understanding the issue and the question, and now bring people in.
I like that a lot, man, because, one of the key questions I wrote down for myself the other day was, how can my business survive if I don't make another dollar for the rest of this year? I just wrote like a worst case scenario, right? Like it won't be that way, but like just for context, I do a lot of keynote speaking at large conferences. All the conferences are being canceled. Yes. I not only the things that I had booked are going away, no one's going to be booking a speaker for the imminent future. So there's that. A lot of the work that I'm also doing are group retreats and the men's mastermind. And those things are either being pushed off or in some cases potentially canceled. And at the very least, like no new people are buying tickets to that, right? Because like they're wait and see. And I just hired a full-time chief operating officer who's now, my responsibility to make sure that like we take care of the commitment that I've made to her, right? So like there's a lot of uncertainty in the space. And when I ask that one question, right, like if I don't make another dollar for the rest of this year, like how can my business survive? And fortunately, I've done a lot of saving. I'm in a good position where like it's all good. And that unfounded fear of like, like there's another conference that cancels. There's another conference that cancels. Okay. And once I was able to get to the bottom of that, it gave me this stability. And I think you said this before, like when we're in this fear mode, we can get so narrowly focused on the finite game, like right here in this present moment. And we lose the bigger picture of it's not going to be this way forever. We have no idea how long it's going to be, but playing the long game, I'm in a position, fortunately, where I can weather the storm. There are a lot of people who are not, who I can now turn my energy and attention to helping versus me just kind of toiling in my own shit. And that's just as important too during a time like this.
Yeah, love it. Dominic, let's move to number 4, because I think it's such a great transition point from to other people, right? And so number 4 is, in a time like this, how do we start to build our tribe? How do we start to think about like, just how do we reach out differently? How do we start to build our tribe? And something that I want to read that was from Marianne Williamson that I thought was just a really beautiful statement in this moment of social isolation and responsibility. So she said, isolate socially, but don't isolate emotionally or spiritually. The way to get through this is to make it not about you. Check on any elderly family and friends. Make sure they have everything they need. Scan your mind for people you know who might need your help. Protect the tribe.
Right on.
And so what a great opportunity to go from this fear-based state of like, do I have enough? And like, how much is actually enough? And I need to take care of my own. Like, living in that fear is a very finite, scary place to be.
Yes, it is.
So let's raise our heads up. And Dominic, you read that your journal note in the very beginning of this. And a lot of people are asking, that's great, that feels right, but how do I do it? What does it look like? And that's what we're talking about on this podcast right now. And this is the place now where we can step up as leaders, look up, and start to create those environments for other people to know that we got clear. We've created the space, right? We've got clear on the facts. We got clear on our fears. We got clear on our key questions. Now we're starting to bring people in to that. And that's how we lead.
That's right. And as men who are being looked to by others for guidance, for clarity, for stability and support, it's really important that you are supported, right? So like when Bryan's talking about build your tribe of support, let's give you some examples, some tangible ways that you can do that. Last night, Bryan and I both got a text message because we're in a group chat with a group of men who have come to one of my previous retreats. And one of the guys in that group, who's like one of the most solid, sturdy guys, that he's a pillar of his community, who all week long has been showing up, over communicating to his clients, over communicating to his family. And it was Friday night, and he was like, guys, I have nowhere to go where I can talk about my fears, because I've got some of them, right? Like I've been strong for everyone else, but what about my fears? And Bryan and I were both like, dude, you came to the right place. Because you and I have been part of a men's group for the past 2 years. Every Monday night, we come and let the guard down, and we fall apart sometimes so that like when we're outside of that container, we can come back the strongest version of ourselves. But we need that place. We need that space to go where we can let it rip so that we can come back out stronger. So a way for you to potentially do this is to think about, like, is there another man or 2 or 3 other men that you can reach out to? Start a group a chat with them right now and just be like, hey, like, you're someone that I respect, and we're entering this new time of chaos and uncertainty. And I would love for us to have a place where we can express our fears, but also the intent of this group is to make sure that we can strengthen our foundation, right? This is not a forum for us to circulate breaking news or to whatever, but like, we are going to hold space for each other, maybe even set up like a recurring call where you get on for like 90 minutes or 60 minutes and provide support with one another, with the intention that when you leave that container, you are going back to the real world stronger and ready to support yourself and others.
Understanding the times that we're in, we talked about this in number 1, right? Embrace the transition. Don't forget to reach out. I mean, Dominic just gave a really clear, simple example of get a group of guys together, talk about with an intention, like get out of drift with a clear intention. And whether it's your colleagues, your family, like, be intentional about reaching out. Get some FaceTime, literally on FaceTime, or get onto Zoom, have some meetings, and be intentional about it. I sent a video out, so a 30-second video out to a company that I'm working for with no other purpose other than to say, I'm here. Give me a shout. Like, here's how I want to communicate. I want to communicate a video because I miss being with you people in person. I like being with other people, and that's and just reaching out is a way that we can build our tribe and again grow through this. At the end of this, whenever that may be, what if we were actually more connected? What would that look like?
Yeah. Bingo. So this is a time to get creative. People are going to be dying to hear from you. So make sure that, like, it's
dying, Dominic. Really, we're going with that.
People are craving to hear from you.
There it is.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You know what? Actually, this is great point. I'm glad you said dying, Dominic. So yeah, this is a time for us to build our own tribe, but also like, be really conscious, like Marianne Williams said, about others.
Yeah.
And just a quick fact here, like on we're not going to get into any of the biology of COVID-19 or anything like that, but let our consciousness be aware of others at risk.
For sure.
And so thinking about the elderly folks in our community and what we can do, and also, like, don't be a vector. So take care of yourself. Don't be the person that's out there spreading it. And embracing this transition is not just embracing it for us, but embracing this for the whole.
Yeah. All right. The 5th and final way to fortify your foundation during times of turmoil is design your future, right? Design the new future. So we started with number 1, which was embracing the transition, right? These are new times. But step number 5 is really being intentional around designing your future. And if you've listened to one of our more recent podcasts about, stop drifting 3 steps to, stop drifting 3 steps to take command of your life. The way to break free from drift is to awaken to the new reality. It's to disrupt these habits and patterns that are limiting you. And then the 3rd step is to really design the new future. And as you start to anticipate that you may have more time in some respects, and this may not be true for every one of you, but there may be more time because you're not traveling as much. Things are grinding to a halt. There's a lot of waiting around. Well, now you have an opportunity to do some of the things that you have been talking about doing, but maybe there's been, quote, no time to do it. Mm-hmm. Online courses, starting a meditation practice, cleaning rooms and cluttered, Marie Kondoing your closet, developing a journaling practice. There are plenty of different ways that you can start to design your future. And we'll also talk about some like healthy inputs that we've created for you that can help you to use this time effectively to design a future that you're excited to live into.
Thanks for that list, Dominic. I'm going to do all of those things during this time. Right, there's going to be more indoor time. And yeah, this is like, again, what if at the end of this, not only are we more connected with our tribe, but we've built the skills, we've done the things to build what we actually want in life. And so where most people are in the let's get through it mentality, right? This group has the tools to grow through it. And because people will be bogged down with the news and with the fear, they are going to be moving slower.
That's right.
And so there is no better opportunity for people that are doing the work, that have this mentality to grow from it, to accelerate past right? Where we could be even in a normal environment. So this is what a wonderful opportunity to come out of this thing and like, wow, like I discovered an entire new part of me through meditation, through a journaling practice. I developed a new skill. I know for me, there's been 2 online courses. One is Dr. Shefali's Conscious Parenting, and Jim Quick. This is embarrassing because I mentioned this probably on a podcast 6 months ago. Speed reading course, and I'm still on episode 2 of 30. So I've got some time to do some courses. And again, my expectation and intention is to be closer with Becca, my girlfriend, to be more connected with my family, and to grow the skills that I know that I need to make me and my business better.
I love that, man. And I've actually been thinking about the Wim Hof online program, the breath work program for months now. This could be a time where I can sign up for that and carve out time because I'll be home more often. Another big thing for me is creation. You know, this could be a great time where I can create and journal and blog, and even us doing this right now. Like we don't typically podcast on a Saturday. This is like an ad hoc, and this is great. Like I feel lit up by this and coming up with these 5 different ways, right, that we can fortify our foundation. So for many of you who have been looking to flex your creation muscle, this is the time to do that. And Bry's got like his guns up in the air, flexing his muscles. Looking good, buddy. You've been back in the gym?
They're still there. They're still there. I think maybe I'll grow my biceps during this time at home too.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen bigger.
Yes, that's
biceps,
fair. Yep.
And you know how you just said before about like using this as a time to level up. I've already seen how this has called me to much higher ground as a leader, because I've just launched the Great Man Mastermind, right? Like we've have 20 guys who are coming together, who are scheduled to come together in May for our first time in New York. And the other day was the first time I launched the group chat to put all 20 of us in there. And it was like a really strange time to talk about anything other than the coronavirus. And bringing these guys together, I had to really think from a leadership perspective, how do I bring in that conversation and at the same time not get totally stopped by, not stopped completely in the life, like to get stopped short of what we were starting to talk about, which is bringing this mastermind together. And what I had to do was create like a 90-second video that just said, hey fellas, this may seem like a strange time to launch this group chat with all the other things going around, but I thought deeply about this. And I recognized there's no better time to bring 20 leaders together right now, because the world needs us to be strong. The world needs us to be grounded. And therefore, this community is going to be your place to ground, to bring fears, to come out stronger. And so it's caused me to just get more thoughtful around how do I lead during times of turmoil? And I already feel stronger than if life was just, rosy, the way that, like just normal.
Leadership requires creation. And so a challenge I'm giving everybody here is just to notice in this new transition space, are you consuming more or are you creating more? Because the automatic in most of us is going to be consume, yes. Whether that's the news or just movies or whatever. I'm not saying get rid of consuming completely, but if you're starting to feel isolated, if you're starting to feel like a victim in this, start to create, because our creative energy allows us to lead, to think differently, and to grow, right? And that's the name of this game.
Love it. Love it. So some of the resources that we have available to you, which, I mean, these are consumptive resources, but also some of them can lead to creation. If you go to our website, which is doinnerwork.com, and click on the resources tab, doinnerwork.com, click on the resources tab, or you could just go doinnerwork.com/resources. We have some meditations in there, right? There's a meditation about like designing the next year of your life. There's another meditation in there about designing the next decade of your life. You will listen to those with the intention of creating, right, a vision for your next year, a vision for your next 10 years. Corey Mascara, who's a world-renowned meditation instructor, created a 15-minute guided meditation around bringing peace and presence. You can download all 3 of those things to bring you a little bit more into the present moment. We also have a bunch of different book lists that are on there. This is a great time to listen or to read to some books, read more books. We have a list called 12 books every man must read, 18 books that every business leader must read, and then 15 books written by women that we recommend. So there are some tools that are on there that we have curated for you because they're the best of the best that we've used to design our future. So you could head to doinnerwork.com and click on the resources tab for a list of those resources and more.
I think it's a good opportunity to talk about consumption versus consuming. To consume the things that are, I think, what was the guy's name? Scott that we interviewed, the ultra
Scott Young, yeah,
Scott Young.
Yeah,
and he talks about like the meta learning or learning to learn.
Yes,
what a great opportunity to do that. So we've got Scott's podcast where we talk about like how you make desires from desire to project plan to actually doing, right? So yes, you're consuming a 45-minute podcast, but there's things to do afterwards to create. Giovanni talks about how when he reads a book, how he consumes it, but then how he takes notes and creates and decides to do things after he reads those books. So that's another podcast of ours. So even if you're consuming, and I will be watching some movies, right? I will be reading some books for sure. Like let that release happen. And I know when I'm at my happiest, I'm at my best, it's when I'm consuming the things that help me create. So I'll be doing a lot of that too.
That's good. I'm consuming the things that help me create. So in this time, like, can you bring even that awareness, that intention is, if I'm going to be consuming this thing, part of it could just be for fun. Part of it's because maybe we need a little bit of a temporary respite from all this stuff out here. The other part of it is, can I consume this so I can create, so I can grow? Back to your original point, Bryan, it's that way we can grow through this change versus get through this change. So let's do a summary of the 5 ways that you can fortify your foundation during times of turmoil. Number 1, embrace the transition. Number 2, build a plan for your information consumption. Number 3, get clear on the facts and your fears. Number 4, build your tribe of support. And number 5, design your future.
Embrace it and keep growing.
Hey, did you get something of value out of this podcast? If so, I'm going to ask you a favor. Would you be so amazing as to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review? Your ratings and reviews can show someone who's just discovered our podcast for the first time that we are worth listening to. And that way we can reach a wider audience. So please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. You rock.